Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Benchwarmer Sports Podcast, another actually special edition of the Benchwarmer Sports Podcast. Today, we continue our interview series with Kevin here, who is a rower at the amazing school of Vanderbilt University. Vanderbilt has been in the news lately as a school athletically because of their success in a wide range of sports, specifically football as well. Raffi and I, of course, have talked about the success of that team a lot. But today we're going to be talking about rowing. We're going to be talking about Kevin and his experiences rowing. Without further ado, though, Raffi, how have you been? Kevin, how have you been?
Raffi, you can start.
Wow, what a great person that we already got on. Great manners. I'm doing well, Davian. Things are moving along. Excited for this interview. Gonna be honest, I don't know a lot about rowing, so I'm excited to learn more about the sport. And then I'll throw it over to you, Kevin. How are you? How are things? Thank you for giving us some time, and yeah, can't wait to ask you some questions.
Great, thank you. No, it's great to be here. Excited to share a little bit about the sport of rowing. It's kind of like a niche thing. More people are starting to learn about it, so I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah, well, we're happy to be with you. And so, Kevin, just to start off, I know you're in the middle of the season right now, correct? Or at least, like, maybe not in the middle, but in the season right now. How's that been going for you? How have the tournaments been? Just talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, for rowing, we're pretty split. So we have like our seasons are split into like a fall and then a spring. We call it championship racing. So our fall is pretty much 5K races, so more long distance. So we're spending a lot of time getting a lot of meters in, both on the rowing machine and on the water. Um, as far as the season's been going, I think that for me, given that this is basically my second year now on varsity, um, I think that there's a lot of gains to be made. I view this year as a development year for myself. And as far as we call it regatta results, you said tournaments. Regattas are like our another way of saying the tournament or events. I think that so far they've been pretty good. I mean, I'm dealing with a little bit of issues myself, in terms of like injury, but nothing too major.
That's fair.
Awesome.
And what really got you into rowing? We'll just start off with that. I mean, I personally know you. I know you come from a wide range of sports in the past. What kind of got you into it?
Yeah, so to be honest, I didn't even know what the sport of rowing was when I came to the university. I didn't even have it in my mind that I was going to end up rowing for the university. And I remember that I was actually at the club fair. It was kind of funny. There's this tall 6'4" guy who approaches me. Mind you, I'm like 5'11", so I was like, okay, why the hell am I doing this sport? But he approaches me and he looks me up and down. He's like, "Oh, you could row." I was like, huh, the ego. I was like, oh, maybe I am the shit. You know what I mean? But yeah, so I was like, okay, let me should throw a dart and see where it lands. Ended up going to my first practice and I really liked it. For me, it was the mentality. It's very hard, and it's not meant for everybody. I mean, you're pushing your body to a limit that normally most people don't think that they can push themselves. And for me, I think it's amazing what the body can do, and when you learn a little bit more about yourself, and then the team bonding is amazing. So I would say that's like how it really started, and it just got better from there.
I'll go to the next question. And something that I had, just because when you look at the entire sport of rowing, it's a bunch of people. Maybe you can shed a little bit of light, maybe two questions. One, just how many people are in a boat typically in a competitive match? And then also, how important is chemistry when you're on a team and in a game where it really comes down to communication, it really comes down to working as a team because if you guys aren't all at the same tempo and rowing at that same speed, you guys aren't going towards the right place. You guys are moving, you guys are shifting. So first off, just how many people are typically in a boat, and then also second off, how important is chemistry in the sport of rowing as a whole? Because I'd have to imagine that it's a focal point, being on the same page as your teammates, and also having just good chemistry not only on the boat but off the boat to build that repertoire as a whole.
I mean, great questions. I mean, for starters, in terms of the number of people on the boat, the most prestigious event in rowing is the eight. You have eight guys in a boat and a coxswain or coxswain. The coxswain is there steering and making calls, so we'll get to that a little bit more when we talk about the chemistry and how that works. But we also have other size boats. We have fours, so four people. We have pairs, so two. We also have different types of rowing styles. We call it sweeping versus sculling. So sweeping, everybody has one oar. In sculling, you have two oars in each hand. So there's a couple of different combinations you can make. Now, in terms of team chemistry and bonding within the boat, I think that's probably the pinnacle of rowing, and one of the most important things, in addition to having a good technique, is that if you don't, the key word being trust. If you don't trust the people in your boat, the boat's not going to move very fast. You know every single day that you and the rest of the boys have been working their butts off, really breaking down their bodies, really trying to make sure that we're all going towards one goal. And to have that same mentality and that same mindset is really what's going to make boat go fast. And in terms of communication and trying to keep the team together, uh, as I mentioned before, we have a coxswain that usually sits in the front of the boat or in behind us, depending on the style of the boat, if it's a four or an eight, and they're really there to just make calls and really just keep our heads in the boat, right? And the way that I like to think about it is that we try to have the least amount of brain cells in the boat, because the more you think, the slower you're going to go. That's usually the mindset that we have. And if we can have someone that does the thinking for us, like our coxswain, it makes our lives a little bit easier and helps us actually build that bond a little bit better.
Yeah, and I'm kind of you talked about bond within the boat and how you kind of really just turn off your brains to be able to like really work well with each other. Off the boat, what is that like? What's the chemistry between the team? Are you guys having like social events together? Or is rowing kind of the sport where it's like you show up, you train together, but then there's not that a huge amount of camaraderie afterwards? Can you touch on that? What has that experience been like, especially coming in as a freshman? Because I know you started freshman year, correct?
Yeah.
So coming in freshman year, were they there as a support system for you, or was that not really the case?
Yeah, I think that off the water is probably where the biggest amount of connection comes from. We spend probably the majority of our days after practice. We eat breakfast together, we study together, we do a lot of things together. Now, I'm not limiting myself to my rowing and my guys, but that's what it takes to build connection. I love the my boys. I think that um, as far as how would I say this? I guess as far as when you, especially when I joined as a freshman, it was really a lot of the upperclassmen, the varsity rowers, that were actually spending a lot of time with us, trying to make us enjoy the sport. Because I mean, we can say we don't want to do it at any time, but we didn't, right? Because we had these mentors. Well, I would say that they're mentors that we were actually assigned to. We have varsity members that are assigned to first years to kind of improve their experiences and get to know them a little bit better to build that connection. I think that really goes a long way. And currently, right now, I have two freshmen that I'm mentoring right now, and so far it's been amazing. They love the sport. It's been great. So, hope that answers the question.
Yeah, no, it definitely did.
I guess the next question that I have, you talk about the importance of all that. How do you guys come up with a race strategy when you guys are looking into any competitions? I don't know too much about what the calendar is, how many races you guys typically do, but when you guys do have a race, do you guys look at other boats and say, okay, well, these people tend to go out really quick and then they find a good pace, or they find an early pace and then they speed up towards the end? Do you guys kind of adjust based on who you guys are going up against? How do you guys adjust your strategy when you guys are competing against other clubs and universities?
I think that for us specifically, we don't like to change the way we do things for different crews. We row like a particular way, and we're going to row it very well. And I think that going into events, we're pretty aware of what other teams are capable of, given that we don't necessarily all go to the same regattas, especially during the spring, which I would consider is probably the most prestigious races that we go to. We championship races, they're 2,000-meter sprints. Um, Two things. One, the boat's next to you, they're going faster, you pull harder. And you try, like, there's nothing you can do. You still have to stick to the plan. And if you need to call the sprint call early in the last 250 meters and instead make it at last 400 meters, we're going to make that call at 400 meters and we're going to go. Um, yeah, but we stick to a plan, right? There's nothing that we change. We know the times of other crews, we know how they perform, it's all online. And we kind of go based on that in terms of the athleticism or where we need to be athletically. That's how we kind of gauge it. And that I know all teams do that too. So we're not unique in that front.
I'm curious, kind of going off that. You talk about athleticism, and I'm sure like positions are sometimes switched around. What's your position, and are you usually in multiple positions in the boat in terms of where you're sitting, or are you usually sticking to one based off where you usually practice during, during training sessions?
Yeah, so our team is unique in the sense that unlike other clubs where they tend to have significantly more people on the roster, they tend to keep these people in the same position, usually change them. Not too often. We call it seat racing, where as the name implies, you race for your seat. And depending on how well you do it at practice, depending on your scores off the water, we call them ergometer scores or ergs. So like concept twos, rowing machines, whatever you want to call it. Um, Depending on those scores can impact where you go in the boat, depends on how you move a boat, will depend on where you go. Now, in terms of the seat in the boat, um, I'll do this in the simplest way. So you have 8 people in a boat. The people in and we would call it we have a stern and the bow. The stern would be the front of the boat, the bow is at the back of the boat. And the 2 people that sit in stern are really important for setting cadence and tempo. They set the rate, and everybody follows them behind. So we actually count backwards. So it would be 8 and 7. Now, the middle 4, we call it the engine room. You have the strongest guys that are sitting in the middle of the boat just yamming it. And then the back 2, we call them bow pair, or 2 seat and bow, or one. They're really responsible for setting the boat, which means their technique is probably probably some of the best technique in the boat. They're not necessarily the uh, biggest people. They're usually a little bit smaller, but they have a very important role setting the boat because the more set the boat is going to be, so the less tippy it's going to be, the faster you're going to go, so less drag. And in terms of where I am, I mean, I'm constantly being moved around, but I guess I miss one key component is that as I mentioned before, the difference between like sweeping and sculling, where we have one oar or 2 oars, when you sweep, most people have a side where they row only on starboard or on port. So these are the 2 different sides that you could row on. Um, and for me, I am a starboard, which means that I guess like it's hard to explain. I mean, if you're a boater, you probably know what starboard and port is. They're pretty they're pretty common terms, but maybe in simplest terms, you're kind of twisting out to your left, and people, if you're on port, you're twisting out to the right. So, I mean, yeah, most of our guys can row both sides, which is beneficial, especially when it comes to finding a spot in your boat. But for me, in terms of flexibility, I'm better on my left side.
Got it. And then, kind of going into like the day in of the life of a rower, what do your practices look like during the week? Is it a lot of lifting? I'd assume it's a lot of thing. The rowing machines as well. Rowing machines, bane of my existence. I've done those before for like 10 minutes. I'm already. I feel in my core. I'm like, I can't sit down for a whole like for at least a couple hours. 'Cause I'm just like, oh my gosh, the crunch. But can you just talk a little bit about what the schedule like? What's a normal week look like for you schedule wise when it comes to your rowing practices? Is there a lot of getting out on the water, or is it just a lot of during the week when you're in your classes? It's a lot of just you're lifting, you're doing your rowing, the machines, and then the weekends are more going out into the water and actually doing some more full blown real life rowing. It's not like
Yeah.
simulation, but like just rowing in general, like the actual application of it.
hmm I mean, in terms of like a normal day, it also depends, right? So in the winter, we're usually not in the water; it's too cold. But when
Right.
it is warm enough, typically it's like 30 degrees. If it's below freezing, then we probably wouldn't go out. We've done before because, why not? But on a normal day, weather is like maybe 50 or 60 degrees in the morning. We get up around, I mean, most guys, but for me, I get up around 4:30 in the morning. I'm out by 5 o'clock in the car or maybe 5:15. I don't know. It's hard to function that early in the morning. Your brain doesn't really work. Um, but we get to practice around 5:30 at the lake, get the boats ready to go, and yeah, we have usually an hour and a half, 2 hour session on the water. That consists of, it depends on the day. Usually it's like we would call steady state, so it's probably not getting your heart rate too high, but still getting in a workout. It's kind of like endurance, so long periods of time you're rowing for, but not the volume is high in terms of the number of meters that we're doing, but the effort is sustained. Now, there are different workouts, of course. We have more high intensity workouts on certain days, and then we have those steady state days for those cool downs. But following the practice, we, get back as a team around 8:30, have breakfast, we go to class, and typically in the afternoon, uh, usually around 3 or 4 p.m., we'll probably go and do a second session on the erg machines, maybe 45 minutes to an hour, if not longer. And if we have like certain other pieces that we want to pull meters base, so for example, 10Ks or 12Ks that we would do, um, just again for maintenance purposes to make sure that our bodies are in check. And then of course we're stretching and doing all those sorts of recovery in between, and then probably in
Got
bed
it.
by like 9 o'clock on a good day.
Got it. And how many miles do you typically, or meters, regardless of units, do you guys typically row in a week?
Oof. Well, it varies. I think that if we do like an average day on the water would be like 15K per day on the water, multiply that. We train 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. We only get Sundays off. So I guess like it's hard to do math. It would probably be around maybe I want to say 80 to 100K per
Oh,
week.
wow.
Wow.
Okay.
I think.
Got it.
I think maybe less. Depending on what the structure looks like. In the winter, we do definitely a lot more meters. Just because we're inside, we're trying to make up for the lost time, especially for the crews that can stay outside on the water, like Texas.
Right. And then before I throw it over to Davian for the next question, how long is a typical race? Is it typically, do things vary based on the location that you guys go to? Or is it pretty standard where you have, it's this many meters and that's just essentially what every meet winds up being lengthwise?
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, we have the fall and the spring. We call it championship racing. In the fall, they're set 5K races, and in the spring, they're set 2,000 meter races. Now, in terms of how long they take, 5Ks usually are probably around, it could range. It really depends on conditions of the water. It depends on the water. Weather can have a big impact and wind. So those races would probably last between like maybe high 13 minutes to sometimes 20 minutes, depending on how the conditions are on the water. Um, Relevant of how fast you are. And then in the 2Ks, it ranges between probably around 5 minutes and 40 seconds to around 7 minutes and 30 seconds. In
Got
terms
it.
of, I'm taking into account all different build classes. So
Yeah,
Right. Right. Okay.
that makes a lot of sense. And I think thank you for providing that detail. I think this is something that a lot of people don't really know about. And I'm sure our viewers are really going to enjoy knowing that. Kind of really going more into the nitty gritty about Vanderbilt rowing and specifically the men's team. I know that the men's team is not a recognized D1 team. The SEC itself does not have D1 men's rowing, but I know that you compete against D1 teams. And so my question for you is when you're heading into regatta, you're seeing these other teams, do you feel disadvantaged when you're looking at these other teams? Do they have better equipment, better trainers? What is the difference between being a club versus being competing on a D1 level, which is in the Ivy leagues and other college leagues?
yeah, I think that, I mean, at face value, I mean, it is definitely like slight disadvantage in terms of funding. I mean, we're lucky enough to have start to receive a lot of more funding for our program, which makes things very easy in terms of getting equipment, or a lot easier, and then as well as maintenance of boats. But I mean, when I look at these other schools that do have funding, especially when we go to some of our events, like we call this, it's called the Southern IRAs. We have the Northern IRAs where most of the Ivies go to, so we have the Southern IRAs. It's honestly kind of more motivating because a lot of the club teams in the South, for example, like UVA, Purdue, super fast crews raced against Harvard in England, and Henley, UVA, raced against Harvard Lights. They didn't win, but it was still a very impressive feat to show like the clash between the two levels of the championship and collegiate levels, and how it's actually getting closer, and really shows that you don't need to be at the D1 level to be able to perform at such a high level, nor do you have to have been rowing for 8 to 10 years. Of course, it helps, but at the same time, it shows you that if you're really dedicated, you can make big progress. And also, like in terms of motivation for us, it's great. Our biggest thing is let's prove to these D1 programs that they don't need funding anymore. And in fact, a lot of D1 programs have actually lost funding because of the club team performances. especially Vanderbilt has contributed a lot to that as well.
Well, that's good. Glad to hear that you guys are winning, definitely. I guess going off that, you did mention funding as a thing, and SEC, other sports, I know they get heavy amount of funding through NIL deals, things of that sort. Does your rowing team have any NIL deals as a team, or do personal rowers, players, have deals with various companies? And finally, the last question is: do you personally have any NIL deals?
Mhm. Yeah, great questions. In terms of partnerships, I mean, we are kind of limited to what we are allowed to wear in terms of, like, for example, Nike. That's we have the university or athletics has a contract with Nike, so we rarely like all of our clothes are usually Nike. In terms of some of our other things where we order from like Lululemon or things like that for other athletic wear. In terms of whether the amount of money that we pay. Unfortunately, right, we're still paying a little bit of money. I mean, it's required in the sport. I feel like no matter where you go, you're going to still pay some money because you need to get things for yourself. But we pay a little bit of money for also maintenance as well, but not as much as we used to pay. And given that we're now have new avenues of funding from other donors and our new endowment now we're sanctioned by the university, which is quite nice. We're probably going to the point where we don't need to pay anything, which is amazing. And yeah, I mean, as far as deals go, we do like all other teams. I mean, we have partnerships, we get discounts, we get bulk orders. But again, it's quite difficult, especially the club team, to get all of those things because it's like, oh, what are you going to do for us? How is that going to put us on the big stage? And we're saying at the same time, I mean, if we just keep doing what we're doing, right, it's going to get us there. I mean, we have these we've been looking for like smaller avenues of funding. For example, I don't know if you're familiar with Affedi, the ride sharing app. We got a little bit of a partnership there with them in terms of getting from A to B.
Nice.
Frankly, I haven't used it because it's not of interest to me. Um, but in terms of NIL deals, um, for me personally, I don't know if I would consider it NIL deals. It's more so individual, like me, myself looking out at or reaching out to other companies in terms of sponsorships. And I think for me, it was quite nice to be able to get a partial sponsorship with Viore. If you all are aware with the athletic or high performance athletic clothing brand, like kind of I would say like fancy. But yeah, it's really nice that they are able to provide a partial sponsorship for student athletes, and I'm actually so grateful to get it because I mean to be able to afford a lot of athletic gear. I mean it's expensive. The
Yeah,
sport is expensive in itself, and whatever you can get is great. So we're hoping in the future we'll keep getting more like free stuff.
fair enough.
But right now I feel great. I mean, we just received our gear packs. They were amazing.
Nice. That's awesome.
Very nice. Awesome. And then just continuing on with talking about rowing, I know you talked already earlier on about some of the smaller but still noticeable disparity between club teams going up against the some of the D1 men's rowing programs. So Vanderbilt's women's team, I believe that is a D1 program. Do you guys interact with them at all? Are there any differences between the two programs? Just overall, just how are things with that, and overall, what are your interactions with the women's team as well?
Yeah, so actually the women's team is not D1.
They're not.
They're also club.
Oh,
No.
I thought my
And
understanding is that
I
they were
mean,
the
I
one.
guess
Okay.
like
Yeah. Got it. Okay.
no, don't worry about it. It's just in the South, there's very few. Rowing is just not like as a Division One sport in the South. It doesn't really exist other than like Louisville, UT Austin, University of Miami is not even in the SEC. But or UT Knoxville is another example. So there's a couple. Um, but our women are, I mean, we still get to train with the women. That's part of a big culture of our team that the men and women do train together, but we do train separately. So we have still different classes. So if we're training in the erg room together on the rowing machines, it's going to be completely separated. Where, I mean, the men will be on one side, the women will be on the other. And in terms of individual workouts, we tend to do that. We tend to separate.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. That makes sense. I mean, I'm curious then, continuing this conversation about D1, you think there's a future where rowing is going to become D1? I mean, you did mention that you are, putting up a good fight against some of these D1 teams. There is an endowment that you guys personally have where you're getting that funding. So, is there a rush for you as like being a rower? Do you want to become D1? as soon as possible, or do you think that you're still able to race against these top teams? You have a good amount of funding. Sure, it could always be better, but I'm kind of curious. Like, would how where do you see that? And as a rower, do you want to become D1?
I think that personally right now, I don't think we're ready to become D1. And I think that those who are actually making massive developmental gains, both on the water and off the water, it wouldn't be fair in the sense that if we started recruiting athletes that were already at that level who've been rowing for 7 or 8 years, it becomes difficult for us to make those progresses and we get pushed down. And probably our whole coaching staff would change, and the university would start hiring its own thing, doing its own thing. And I think what we've had since, I mean, 1984, I believe that's when we started the rowing at Vanderbilt. I mean, it's been ingrained so much that it doesn't make sense for us to even go D1 because it doesn't really change much. Sure, it will give us maybe an extra recovery facility or two, but I don't think that's going to make or break. Like, I don't think that would make me feel any better. So I think it really just it comes down to giving the opportunity to grow. I mean, we have some athletes, for example, last year, one of our women's rowers, national champion 2 years in a row, runner up in one of her years. And I mean, she went to a year now at the University of Miami to row D1. We had another rower that went to Rutgers to row D1 after college had NCAA eligibility. We have one more rower that's going to Duke, women's rowing at D1. So there's a lot of opportunity after, which I feel like it's kind of like JUCO, but better.
Fair enough.
So maybe like a Diego Pavia story, but maybe better than that.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, since you
Definitely the
mentioned
same
him,
level.
yeah, since you already mentioned him, I'm curious. I mean, other teams, all across Vanderbilt, athletically have been doing amazing. I mean, it sounds like rowing has been getting better. I mean, you guys have that new endowment that you just kind of explained about. How are the vibes in terms of being an athlete on campus? I know that rowing isn't the biggest athletic sport, but is there a general buzz around athletics, given that Vanderbilt has always been historically known as a more of an academically rigorous school and very much academically focused, and now all of a sudden there's a huge spotlight on your sports and athletics?
I think that it only helps us. I feel like it puts our name on the map. Um, I mean, especially with football. I mean, it was kind of upsetting last year, but given what our season looked like, but ever since we started winning, which I will say it's probably Diego Fabios. That's the reason, and head coach. But it's definitely been like if like the culture of the university is much more it's interesting how it is rooted in sports. We have a very work hard, play hard mindset at Vanderbilt. And given that our sports is doing phenomenally well, um, I think that's really have like boosted student morale. Honestly, made people even happier on campus. I mean, especially because we got game day as well, and one of our our students that is actually not, I wouldn't say an immediate friend of mine, but kid that I know, the one who made the punt
Oh, that's awesome.
for
Yeah,
the School of Engineering.
that's sick.
Yeah, but I mean, just like the culture surrounding the team in terms of other teams and the relationship actually the teams have with students. I mean, our kicker, he went out preparing for helping other students prepare for the field goal kick
Nice.
on the main lawn. I
That's
mean, that
awesome.
just shows you how like interconnected athletics is with the student body, and just shows you that you can have a really strong academic school and have a good sports program as well in all aspects.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
And
fair.
you're talking about that balance right now, which leads me to one of my final questions. And I always get impressed whenever we talk with student athletes because I, at one point in time, which that was almost 2 years ago, which is kind of crazy, was a college student. I know wild. I look like I am a college student. I look like I'm 20, honestly. No, I'm just kidding. But, anyways, as someone who's in college, but also doing rowing, being an athlete, and also just, you already mentioned the schedule that you have typically week in, week out. How do you balance the academics and also the athletics at such a prestigious academic school? Because now as you mentioned, the sports are now getting the spotlight too. So now it's not just an academic school, but a sports school. But I like to think of Vanderbilt as, along with Georgia, I'd say, as the northwestern of the SEC or some of the Ivy schools essentially of the South. So, what is it like, kind of balancing the academics with the athletics for you personally, and how have you been able to manage that?
Keyword being work through all of your breaks. I know it sounds rigorous, but I think that for a lot of the students here, I mean, a lot of all the rowers are very like strong academically because they have a very good time management. I mean, we're working through probably all of our free hours in the day, and a lot of the times we use our weekends a lot to knock out a ton of work. Now, that doesn't say we don't necessarily get to have fun on the weekends. Of course, we get to have fun on the weekends, especially because Sundays are our day off. So we have that Saturday night is nice to get out with friends and go talk with other people. Um, but yeah, I mean, the key is really just trying to stay on top of your work and not necessarily let things fall behind. Yeah, it's very academically rigorous, but it's not impossible. And I think that if you instill in your head that, oh, I can't do it, then you're not going to be able to get it done. But rowing is so unique that you're able to push your body to such a level that you can really do anything if you just sit down and work. And I think that's pretty instilled in the entire team. I mean, of course, some people struggle more than others, but it's doable. It's manageable.
Right. And I think rowing has trained you quite well too overall because, as you mentioned, it's such a mentally tough and tasking sport where it really is one team just out is going to just try harder, and it's just all mental psychology. A lot of it comes down to that. Both teams, both all these boats that are competing against each other, they all have a wide ranging of skill, but it all comes down to the mental and the fortitude, the training, the hours. So I definitely think that if there was any good sport to be very disciplined and very able to just have that lock in kind of mentality, I think rowing honestly is definitely one of the more better sports that prepare you for that mentally and just the lock in and then continuously putting in more and more effort. My final question, unless Davian, I'm sure you probably have one or two more. My final question is just about the future of rowing. What are your thoughts? Has joining rowing and you getting involved with the team, making all these new connections, building this chemistry with a lot of your teammates, have you looked at more professional rowing? Is rowing a sport that you see potentially growing over the next few years? I don't know too much about how it works professionally or if it's more just something we see in the Olympics. So if you don't mind shedding some light on that and just overall your experiences now with, are you more into rowing? Because for me personally, my personal side, I wasn't the best runner, but I still watch the Chicago Marathon year in and year out, partially because I'm from Chicago, but also because cross country running was such a big thing for me. Where after 2 years of cross country running in high school, it's like I love the Chicago Marathon. Every single year now I watch it. So I was wondering if you've had a similar effect. Obviously, much better athlete than I am personally, but a similar effect to rowing as a whole, paying attention to it professionally, and then what are your thoughts on the future of rowing as a whole as a sport?
I think that rowing is definitely it's not that it's strange because it's not that it's getting more popular. It's more so it's one of those things that just stays in its own little bubble that's untouched. I think definitely it seems to me that it's becoming bigger. I mean, because I've been paying attention to sport for so much for the past 2 years or a year and a half. It's definitely becoming bigger, and I honestly don't know. I think that given that I see the people around me who are able to commit to D1 schools after to get that racing experience at the NCAA level, which is, I mean, you could push yourself to NCAA level now, so I don't want to even make the distinguishment. Um,
I'm adding some years to my eligibility. Let's do it.
yeah, but usually we have about a year of eligibility coming out of the club program, so that gives us access to the NCAA or NCAA. I don't
Right.
know. People are particular about that, but regardless. Um, I mean, I've definitely considered it. I think it's definitely a long road, definitely a long road. And I don't want to look too far. I want to take it step by step and trust the process. Because who knows? Anything could happen in the next year or two. And depending from there, I'll figure it out. I mean, I definitely want to have the opportunity to travel internationally, be able to row with other crews and see their style. Um, but yeah,
I got one final question about, you talked about your future in rowing. The head of the Charles, it's the infamous race, of course. Do you dream about competing in that, or is that something, a goal of yours, or is that ever crossed your mind? I know it was a few weeks ago, so
yeah.
that's why I asked.
So funny. Yeah, we sent out a boat. We sent out two boats to Charles, actually. Vanderbilt does compete at the head of the Charles. Unfortunately, I did not make the four that was going out, the varsity men's four that went out. We sent out a men's four and a women's eight. Um, I wouldn't say for me it's not the greatest goal because I know and all the people in the boat had way more experience than me. sure, we're all fast, but it's all about technique, especially because we seat race in even smaller boats. Before they seat race in pairs, and I would say my experience in the pair is not as good as everybody else that was racing in that boat. Um, So I don't necessarily see it as like a dream of mine. It obviously would be amazing to row the head of the Charles, but for me, my goal is I really want to secure a national title on the men's side for this program. We've had a lot of success on the women's side. I mean, last year in terms of men, like I got third at nationals in in the first year event in the men's four, or that was four. So that was a great accomplishment for us. But at the same time, I want to win. So and the rest of the guys want to win. So that's really my big goal right now. I think that Charles is just a little thing there. It's a fun experience. It's very prestigious, but I know I'll be able to do it if I keep going the way that I'm going. So I'm not too worried about that. I should go 1 year or two.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Thanks again for coming on to the podcast. Before we kind of go into the conclusion, do you want to plug any of your socials? Anybody? Give a shout out to anybody? Take the floor.
Uh, I don't typically like shout out my Instagram handle. I am public, so they can look up my name. Follow me if you want to. Haven't started posting on this account yet, but there's more to come, especially in the next couple weeks. Uh, and you know what? Like shout out to my boy Emmett Adams. He's been there with me from day one. I think he was the one who had the most experience in the boat when I started out in my first year, and he's the one that has kept me going. And when I was stuck here in the summer taking organic chemistry, we would go out early in the mornings and we would get in the reps. So really shout out to him. He's probably one of the main reasons why I'm still here.
Yeah, of course. So that'll do it for this edition of the Benchwarmer Sports Podcast. Kevin, thank you again so much for taking time out of your day. It's great learning about rowing. I know what I'm hitting tomorrow. I'm definitely hitting the rowing machine. So that'll be fun until 10 minutes in, and then I'm gasping for air. But anyways, gotta just mentally lock in. But Kevin, thank you again for talking about this. It was really cool to learn more about rowing because, again, as I said in the intro, I don't know a lot about it. So I've definitely now enhanced my knowledge on rowing. So again, thank you so much. Thank you for giving your plugs as well. We'll be sure to shout those out also in the YouTube description as well. But yeah, for Kevin, for David, I'm Raffi. We hope you enjoyed this edition of the Benchwarmer Sports Podcast. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and follow us on TikTok as well at Benchwarmer_sports. So for everyone that I mentioned previously, have a good one, and we'll catch you on the next one. See ya. Bye.
Peace.
Peace.